Hey guys, tonight we begin with a monk standing at the edge of two worlds, one silent and slow, the other familiar but restless. The stars above him are the same as when he left, and yet everything else feels slightly louder now. You can almost hear it too, can't you? That quiet hum of anticipation, of a chapter opening with the gentle crackle of old pages turning. You've spent years in the stillness of stone halls, listening to your breath, sweeping fallen leaves, learning how little you need. And now you walk again on dusty earth, through the gates of a village you once called home. It isn't dramatic, no grand return, just the soft sound of your sandals on the road and the light touch of wind curling around your robe. The sky is the same hue it's always been, but your eyes catch details you never used to see. How the clouds roll in slow spirals, how light dances on a puddle, how silence has its own rhythm even in a noisy world. A gentle reminder, you will not be able to control the world, but you can always return to yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where and when you're listening from. I love imagining all of us spread out across the globe, quietly reflecting together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first steps back into the world, not to prove anything, not to fix what's broken, but simply to remember. To remember how things once felt. The cracked stone wall where you carved your name as a child is still there, partially hidden by moss. The same old fig tree leans slightly more to one side, as if age has made it wiser. You pause beside it. Its bark is rough against your fingertips, but steady. People pass by, but no one notices you yet. You're not dressed like a monk anymore, not exactly. And you realize that's okay. Your identity is not the robe. It never was. Your calm isn't wrapped in cloth, it's in how you breathe when someone bumps your shoulder and doesn't apologize. In how you smile at the barking dog instead of flinching. This, you remind yourself, is the real test of your practice. Not in the stillness of a monastery, but here, where carts rattle and merchants shout, and a child is crying for a toy 3 stalls down. The Stoics often said the true battlefield is the mind. Epictetus taught that the only thing truly ours is how we respond. And now, standing in a place full of echoes from your past, you have a choice. Will you react or will you respond? You sit at a bench near the well. An old woman is drawing water and her bucket slips slightly. Without a word, you step forward and steady the rope. She nods in thanks but doesn't recognize you. That's all right. You didn't help for the recognition. For a moment, you wonder if it's foolish to come back. Shouldn't you have left this behind entirely? Isn't returning a sign that you're clinging to something? But no, you are not here to reclaim the past. You are here to see if your stillness can survive outside the cloister. There's a paradox in this. Sometimes the only way to know we've let go is to return to what we once held and see if it still pulls us. The day moves gently. You walk through the market square, noting how the sun traces the tops of awnings. A seller shouts about ripe oranges, his voice slicing the air. It doesn't disturb you. You feel it pass through you like wind through an open window. But not all is ease. You pass a bakery and the scent of honey bread stirs something old and oddly specific. Your mother used to bring you there after morning errands. You feel the memory press lightly against your ribs. It doesn't hurt, but it hums with something, regret, love, loss. This is where the Stoic training whispers again, let it arise, let the feeling come, don't swat it away. Observe it and let it go like smoke rising in cool air. The monk you were might have tried to suppress it, but the man you are now lets it bloom, then fade. A boy runs past, chasing a wooden hoop. His laughter fills the square and for a second everything feels suspended. You stop, watch him. No one else does. You wonder why we become so good at ignoring joy as we age. Maybe that's part of the lesson too, to return not just with calm but with softness. To hold silence not as a shield but as a mirror, so the world can see itself more clearly through you. You arrive at the edge of a courtyard where people are gathering. A familiar voice rings out, a childhood friend, it seems, now older, louder. He doesn't see you yet. You don't approach. You simply watch from the shade. There's no need to announce your presence. You are here to remember, not to reclaim, not to relive. Just to be in the presence of what once was, and let it pass through you like the breeze that rustles the prayer flags you once strung on the monastery wall. Evening settles slowly. The shadows grow long. A small child offers you a pebble for no reason. You accept it like treasure. She laughs, then runs off. The pebble sits warm in your palm, the weight of a gift that means nothing and everything. And somewhere in the distance, a bell rings. You feel it more than hear it. It doesn't call you to prayer. It calls you back to yourself. You wake early the next morning, not because of any bell or duty, but because your body has not yet forgotten the rhythm of stillness. The sky is the shade of pearl, with the first sounds of the town slipping through cracks in the silence. Broom bristles on stone, the quiet clink of pots, a rooster that seems to sing more for itself than anyone else. You step into the street. Already the air is shifting. The coolness of night has begun its retreat, and the warmth of the coming day brushes against your skin. There's a gentle hum building, life waking up in a place that never really sleeps. And then it hits you, the noise. Not just the obvious kind. Not the barking of dogs or the squeaky wheels of carts, but the invisible noise, the expectations, the glances, the way people fill silence with stories that aren't yours. The kind of noise that says, be someone, prove something, hurry up. You had forgotten this kind of noise. In the monastery, even the birds knew how to leave space between chirps. But here, everyone seems in a rush to be heard, to be seen. And yet no one truly looks at each other. The Stoics taught that nothing outside of us can disturb us, unless we give it permission. That includes this modern kind of noise, woven not from sound but from pressure. A man bumps into you, muttering something as he passes. You feel your body tense. It's such a small thing, but isn't that how it always begins? One irritation, one careless word, one assumption. That's the thread that can unravel your calm if you let it. You take a breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. You remind yourself that the man did not act at you. He acted from himself, his story, his rushing mourning, his unexamined frustration. You are not required to carry his noise. Walking further, you pass a group of teenagers laughing in the corner of a courtyard. Their laughter is sharp, almost mocking. For a moment, you wonder if it's about you. The old version of you, the one who once belonged here, would have either shrunk or flared. But now you simply nod to them and keep walking. There's a paradox here. The less you care what others think, the more peaceful you become, and yet the more deeply you see them. Not through the lens of fear or competition, but as fellow travelers, stumbling through their own tangles of ego and hope. The market is louder today. It stretches wider than before. So many colors, smells, people. For a second it overwhelms you, the chaos of it all. You stop beside a stall selling oranges, the same stall you walked by yesterday. The vendor recognizes you now. He smiles, holds out an orange. For the holy man, he says. You shake your head politely. I'm not holy. Still, he insists, you look like someone who's found peace. You thank him and take the orange. But inside a ripple, that label again, peaceful, wise, holy. People project what they want to see. They forget you are still becoming, still stumbling. And yet, what's the harm in being seen as calm? Only this, that you might begin to perform it instead of living it. You sit at the edge of the square, peeling the orange slowly. The skin comes off in a spiral, bright and fragrant. For a moment, you do nothing but eat, slice by slice. This, too, is practice, presence in action. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his meditations while he was ill and under siege. He didn't wait for the world to be silent before he returned to himself. He wrote with fevered hands and a clear mind. You finish the orange and look around. The clamor is still there, but it's quieter now, not outside but within. You've remembered the technique, observation without attachment. You do not need the city to be silent. You need only to be undisturbed by its volume. A young woman approaches, notebook in hand. "Are you the monk who came back?" she asks. You nod softly. She sits beside you. "Is it true that you didn't speak for years?" You smile. "I spoke when it was needed. And now, what do you say to all this?" She gestures vaguely around the market. You take a moment before answering. "It's not louder than it used to be. I just forgot how to listen." She scribbles that down as if it were wisdom. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just your way of making sense of the moment. She thanks you and walks away. And you sit there, still as ever, surrounded by movement. A paradox again. You are part of this world and apart from it, engaged and unattached, hearing everything, reacting to nothing. You close your eyes for a while, letting the warmth of the sun gather on your skin like a shawl. In this busy square, you become a quiet island. Later, as you rise, you hear a flute somewhere in the distance, a tune with no urgency, just notes scattered like petals. You follow the sound without meaning to, weaving through alleys and stone paths until you come to a balcony where a man plays alone, eyes closed. He doesn't see you. He plays for the music itself, not for applause. And in that moment, you realize something simple and sacred. Not all noise is a disturbance. Some noise is a prayer in motion. Later that afternoon, your feet take you to the outskirts of the village, where the houses thin out and the paths grow less certain. The sun casts long shadows now, and the air tastes of late summer, warm stone, drying grass, the faint memory of river mist. You're not trying to find anyone, but you do. He sees you first, an old friend, older now in ways the mirror doesn't show. He calls your name across the dusty road. It sounds strange, that name. Like a shirt you used to wear that no longer fits quite right. Still, you smile and walk toward him. His arms are wide, his eyes even wider. "I knew it was you," he says, almost breathless. "I told everyone, I said, he'll be back. They always come back." He claps your shoulder with the same rough affection he used when you were both boys wrestling in the fields. You remember the scratch of hay on your skin, the sound of laughter rolling like thunder. You remember liking him then, and you like him still. But now you feel the weight of something more subtle, expectation. "You've been gone so long," he says, walking beside you. "Everyone's talking. They say you've seen the truth, that you've reached some higher state." You glance at him and he laughs. No pressure, right? And just like that, the moment sharpens. He doesn't mean to burden you, but there it is, the temptation of recognition. You respond gently. "I've seen quiet. I've seen how noisy I was inside." He looks at you, puzzled. "But you are different, calmer, wiser even. You talk like one of those philosophers now." You pause. "We're all philosophers," you say. "We just don't always know what we believe." He laughs again, but this time it's softer. There's something tender behind his eyes. "Still," he says, "people expect something from you now. They want answers. They think you've figured it out. And you feel it, that old thread of ego tugging at your robe. The part of you that wants to be seen as wise. The part that wants to play the role they've written for you. But that's the danger, isn't it? Even peace can become a performance. The Stoics warned about this too. Seneca spoke of those who wear the philosopher's cloak but lack the discipline inside. "Don't let the robe deceive you," he said. "A calm face doesn't always mean a calm mind." You breathe. "I haven't figured it out," you say. "I've just learned how to sit with the not knowing." He doesn't reply right away. He kicks a pebble down the path. "You know," he says, "when we were kids, I always thought you were going to do something big, change the world or something. And now," you ask, he shrugs, "maybe you did. Just not the way I expected." You both stop at a bend in the path. The trees part here, revealing the hills beyond. You remember this place. You used to come here to watch the stars and dream of other lives, other selves. You sit side by side on a large flat stone. Silence stretches between you, not awkward but spacious. After a while he says, "Do you miss it?" You look at him. "What?" "The quiet, the solitude, the certainty of a simple life." You let the question settle. "Yes," you say, "sometimes, but it's different now. I carry it with me." He nods, not quite understanding but respecting the answer. You turn the question. "And you? Do you ever wish you'd chosen a quieter path?" He doesn't answer directly. I think I keep busy so I don't have to hear myself think. There it is, truth wrapped in humor. You smile gently. The Stoics would say this too. We run from silence because we fear what it will say back. He turns to you. Tell me something real, something true. You look out at the horizon. You're not the noise in your head, you're the awareness noticing it. He's quiet. And then with a shaky laugh, you always did talk like that. But his eyes are wet. The sun begins its descent behind the hills. The shadows stretch, the light turns to amber. Before you part, he places a hand on your shoulder again. It's good to see you, he says. Really, even if I don't understand everything you've become. You squeeze his hand in return. You don't have to understand it, just walk beside it. And with that, you turn back toward the village. The encounter stays with you longer than expected, not because of what was said, but because of what was stirred. The desire to be understood. The old pride that rises when someone looks at you with admiration. The subtle ego that wears humility like a mask. You watch it all arise. You don't deny it. You simply observe, because that too is the practice. There's a paradox here. When you no longer crave recognition, your presence becomes unmistakable. And when you stop trying to impress others, you begin to live in a way that leaves an impression. The next morning, you pass by the bakery again. The smell of sweet bread tugs at memory, but you keep walking. Just ahead, you see a small crowd gathered outside a tavern. There's laughter, the clinking of cups, familiar voices. It pulls at you more than you expect. You slow your pace. For a moment, your feet forget their direction. This was once your place, your friends, your stories, your nights spent trading jokes and dreams over cheap wine and full plates. The echoes are still in the wood of the doorframe, in the lopsided bench by the window where you once carved a line no one noticed. And there's a voice, loud, joking, half-drunk already, and you realize it belongs to someone you once knew very well. Someone who once called you brother. You hesitate, you could go in. You could sit down, laugh with them just for a little while, who would it hurt? But then you remember the ache that came after the laughter, the emptiness that followed the noise, the way you used to drink to fill a silence you hadn't yet learned to sit with. Desire is a shapeshifter. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in the voice of an old friend, or smells like bread baking, or feels like belonging. Sometimes it shows up not because you're weak, but because you're human. You close your eyes for a breath. The Stoics never told you to kill desire. They told you to understand it, to see it for what it is, a movement of the mind, not a command. Desire asks, why not just give in? And philosophy answers, because peace is better than pleasure that poisons you later. You open your eyes. A man stumbles out of the tavern, sees you, and grins. You're back, he shouts. Come have a drink. You can bless the wine or something. He's joking, or maybe he's not. You smile kindly. Not today. He shrugs and disappears back inside. The door swings closed. The laughter is muffled again. You stand there for another moment. Not because you want to go in, but because you're honoring the part of you that once did. And then you walk on. A little girl skips past you, humming a tune, completely unaware of the small battle you've just won. There's something funny about it, isn't there? That no one claps for your quiet victories, that no one sees you choose peace over impulse. And yet, these choices are the true work. In the monastery, it was easier. There were fewer temptations, fewer mirrors. But now, every street is a mirror. Every interaction reflects back who you've become. You pass the river, its surface smooth and bright. You remember once throwing a stone in frustration, watching the ripples move outward, as if your emotions could rearrange the whole world. Now you just sit and watch the water flow. A boy nearby throws a rock with all his might. It lands with a satisfying splash. He cheers. You smile. Then you whisper, not to him but to yourself. You don't always have to act on what you feel. This might be the hardest truth to live. That a thought is just a thought. That a desire is just a spark, not a fire. That you can feel everything and still do nothing. The Stoics didn't want you to become stone. They wanted you to become free. Free from the tug of every passing whim. Free from the lie that, If I want it, it must be right. You rise again, brushing dust from your robe. You feel the hunger in your belly, but it doesn't control you. You feel the ache of the past, but it doesn't own you. You are no longer at war with your desires. You are simply aware. As the sun rises higher, you make your way back through the market. A vendor offers you a free sample, honey-glazed almonds. You accept one, thank him, and move on. You taste it slowly, fully, without guilt or urgency. Nothing is forbidden, but nothing owns you. There's a strange kind of joy in this. To feel desire pass through you and keep walking. To know you could say yes and still choose no. To be tempted, not because you're failing, but because you're alive. You think of the stories they told in the monastery, of sages who fasted for weeks, of warriors who slept on stone. But the true tests, you now realize, happen in small, invisible moments, like this one. You turn the corner and the tavern is already out of view. The laughter has faded. But you feel stronger, not because you resisted, but because you remembered who you are. Later that day, as the sun begins to slide behind the rooftops, you find yourself at the edge of the square once more. You aren't seeking anyone, but people seem to seek you. A man approaches, mid-conversation with himself, his tone loud and hurried. He looks you over, then blurts, "You're the monk, right? The one who came back from the mountains." You give him a quiet nod. He sits beside you on the stone bench without asking. "I've got a question," he says, squinting at the horizon as if the answer might be hiding there. "If you're so calm, if you've figured it out, then tell me why life is such a mess." You say nothing at first. You're not here to lecture. Silence has its own weight. He'll feel it if he's meant to. He scoffs. "Let me guess. Everything's perception, right? The world isn't messy, I just think it is." You smile lightly but still say nothing. And then he leans in. "See, I've read some of those Stoic quotes people post online. Sounds smart until your wife leaves. Your job vanishes, and your knees don't work the way they used to. You finally speak, your voice quiet. Did any of those things take away your ability to choose how you respond?" He glares at you. "Easy for someone like you to say. You don't know my life." You nod. "That's true, but I know mine. I know what it means to lose what you thought you needed and find out you're still standing." He shifts in his seat. "I'm not here to fix your pain," you continue. "Just to remind you that your pain isn't the only thing that's real." He sighs, a little deflated. "So what, I'm just supposed to pretend everything's fine?" You shake your head. "No. You're supposed to notice what you can control and act from there." He leans back, arms crossed. "Sounds like avoidance to me." You pause, then ask gently, "Which is more powerful? Screaming at the waves, or learning to sail through them?" He doesn't answer right away, just watches the shadows creep along the cobblestones. Eventually he mutters, "Still feels like losing." And there it is, the deeper truth, not anger, not pride, grief. You place a hand on your knee, grounding yourself. "Losing isn't the same as being lost," you say. "And grief isn't a flaw in your logic, it's a sign you loved something." The Stoics were misunderstood, often. People imagined them as cold, unmoved. But even Marcus Aurelius wept for his children. Even Epictetus limped for life after being beaten. They didn't avoid pain. They embraced it without becoming it. The man beside you softens just a little. "Still," he says, "you talk like peace is a choice." You meet his eyes. "It is. But sometimes it's the same choice made 100 times a day." He chuckles bitterly. "That's exhausting." You nod, "Yes. And worth it." He's quiet after that. The square fills with the sounds of merchants packing up, children being called home, the last flutter of birds before dusk. Finally he stands. "Thanks," he says, almost reluctant. You smile. "You did most of the talking." He half laughs, then disappears into the twilight. You sit a little longer, watching the square empty out. There's something humbling in these moments, being asked for answers when you're still learning the questions. The temptation to preach is always there, hiding behind the curtain of your calm voice and steady breath. But true wisdom doesn't rush to speak. It waits for silence to do its work. The paradox hums again. The more certain someone sounds, the more likely they're still afraid of being wrong. As you rise, You think of how often you once tried to explain stillness. Now you realize it's best shown, not said. Later, as you walk through the alleys near your old street, a teenager nearly bumps into you. He glares for a moment, then scoffs and mutters something rude under his breath. You could correct him. You could explain respect. You could match his fire with your own. But what would it teach? Instead, you simply step aside, nod, and let him pass. There's no medal for that, no applause, but inside you feel it, a small crack of light widening. The Stoics spoke often of freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from the need to react to everything. That kind of freedom lives in these small choices. The next day, no one will remember the boy's scowl, but you'll remember how you chose not to carry it. The morning begins with a low hum, the town coming to life with its familiar rhythm. You walk slowly through the square, hands behind your back, letting your senses stretch out. The bread ovens are already smoking. The same dog sleeps under the same cart, tail flicking now and then at flies. And then you hear it, a voice rising above the rest, sharp and heated. You don't need to look to know what's happening. Argument, frustration, old pride flaring in the sunlight. You turn a corner and there they are, two men locked in debate, voices climbing like vines. One of them points furiously, accusing. The other clenches his jaw, trying not to respond but failing with every word. It's a scene as old as cities. You try to pass quietly, unnoticed. But as you move, one of them spots you. "Ah, the monk," he says, as if calling on a referee. "Surely you can settle this." You pause, you could keep walking, but something in their faces, maybe the weariness behind the anger, makes you stop. "What's the disagreement?" you ask softly. They talk over each other, voices layered with history. A business deal, a broken promise, an insult buried in humor that never sat right. It's not about the thing anymore. It's about the pride wrapped around it. You listen without reacting. You nod sometimes. You don't take sides. And then you say something unexpected. "You know," you begin, "I once watched a monk break his favorite bowl. It slipped from his hands and shattered. He didn't flinch." They look at you, puzzled. He smiled and said, "It was already broken the day I first used it." One man scoffs, So, you continue, "He never thought it was his to keep forever. That's what allowed him to enjoy it fully while it lasted, and let it go when it ended." They look at each other. "What does that have to do with us?" the second man asks. You smile gently. Maybe you're both fighting to hold on to something that's already broken, and instead of letting it go, you're trying to fix your pride through someone else's surrender. One of them looks away. The other opens his mouth, then closes it. The Stoics taught that peace is often interrupted not by the world, but by our demand that the world behave a certain way. Our insistence, our grip. You continue, "If something must go your way for you to be at peace, then peace was never yours. It belonged to your conditions." They fall silent, and then one of them mutters, "It's not worth it." The other man exhales, long and slow, "No, it's not." You don't smile. You don't nod. You just let the silence settle like dust after a storm. You walk on, leaving them there. Whether they let go or return to the quarrel is no longer yours to control. That's another lesson, isn't it? Even your calm cannot fix what another is not ready to release. As you pass through the northern gate, you hear birds rustling in the trees. They quarrel too, but only briefly, then fly off in different directions. Not because they're enlightened, just because they don't need to be right. You follow the narrow trail out toward the low hills. The space opens up. The wind brushes your face like a cloth soaked in memory. You sit on a smooth rock and look out across the town. Below, people bustle. Voices rise and fall. Children chase each other between stalls. From up here, none of it feels urgent. You think of Marcus Aurelius again, writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wrote that not from a quiet study, but from war camps and sick beds. He knew the world would never calm for him, so he learned to calm for himself. You look down at your own hands. These hands have done harm. These hands have comforted others. These hands have clasped together in prayer, in hunger, in exhaustion. And now they rest. That is enough. A butterfly lands near your foot and you watch it slowly open and close its wings like a breath. No rush. No need to justify its presence. You smile. Even this is part of the return. Seeing how often conflict is an invitation to prove yourself, and how freeing it is to simply decline the invitation. You rise as the breeze shifts, your robe fluttering lightly around your legs. You walk back toward town, not because you have to, but because peace walks with you now, even through the places that used to make you clench your jaw. Another paradox rises and falls inside your chest. You can only meet anger with calm if you've made peace with your own. And you have, at least for now. The path loops back through the lower part of town, past the old granary and the crooked stone bridge that creaks more now than it ever did. The sun is softer here, casting long streaks of gold across the walls. You're not in a hurry, you never are. Then, out of the quiet, her voice, you'd know it anywhere. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. Some things don't need remembering. They remember you, you turn, and there she is. She hasn't changed in the ways you expected. Her hair is longer now, streaked with silver, but her gaze, steady, warm, quietly questioning, feels exactly the same. She sees you, really sees you. And suddenly the years fall away like old leaves. You came back, she says, not as an accusation, not even as a question, just a simple observation wrapped in more emotion than she probably intended. You nod. I wasn't sure I would. She looks at you for a long moment. Neither was I. You both smile, but it's not an easy smile. There's too much beneath it. A history spoken and unspoken. Things you once said and things you chose not to. You begin walking together without saying where you're going. The body always remembers the rhythm of shared steps. For a while, you say nothing. Then she speaks. I used to imagine what you were doing, where you were. If you were thinking of me. You don't answer right away. I thought about you, she continues, especially on the quiet days, not with bitterness, just wondering if you'd found what you were looking for. You breathe, I found silence. And then I found out silence isn't always the answer. She laughs softly. That sounds like something you'd say. There's a bench by the old garden wall. You sit there, just as you did so many years ago. The stones are warm from the day's sun. The wall is cracked, overgrown with wild mint and thin vines. She looks down at her hands. Do you regret it? You think about the monastery, about the nights spent in solitude, the days of sweeping, chanting, watching your thoughts come and go like clouds. And you think about her, the mornings you walked through town just to catch a glimpse of her on her way to the baker, the way her absence echoed louder than your chanting ever did. I don't regret the path, you say, but I grieved what it cost. She looks up. That answer seems to land somewhere between relief and sadness. I thought, she says carefully, that I wasn't enough for you. You shake your head slowly. It was never about enough. It was about emptiness. I thought if I could empty myself completely, I'd find peace. But even emptiness carries its own longing. She nods, understanding more than you expected. Then she leans back against the wall. Do you still believe people should live apart from love? No, you answer without hesitation. But I believe love must be held lightly, without gripping, without asking it to save you. Another pause. You feel something shift, something release, not in her but in you. The Stoics taught detachment, yes, but not coldness. They didn't say love was a mistake, only that love without clarity can become a chain instead of a gift. Seneca warned about confusing need with connection, and here she is, not needed, not clung to, but simply present. You turn to her. You deserved someone who stayed. She smiles gently. And you deserved someone who let you go without needing to understand why. It's strange how stillness can arrive even in moments like this, not through resolution, but through truth laid bare without shame. She stands, brushes the dust from her dress. Will you stay this time? You don't answer, you're not sure yet. She nods again, reading your silence like scripture. Well, she says, then this goodbye can be softer than the last. You rise too. There is no need to hold hands or make promises. What was between you still exists, not as a future but as a thread in the story. and that is enough. You watch her walk away, a little slower than she used to, but still with that same quiet certainty. As the sun slips behind the rooftops, you stand alone by the garden wall and feel no pain, just space. This, too, is a paradox. You once believed love meant keeping. Now you understand. Love means letting someone walk away and not closing your heart behind them. You begin walking again. The streets are empty now, kissed by shadow and the hush of evening. The ache is still there, but it's no longer a wound. It's a memory folded neatly into your chest, not to be held onto, but to be honored. You sleep lightly that night, not restlessly, just aware. The way trees might sleep if they sleep at all. The wind brushes past your window, and you listen to it move through the eaves like a quiet conversation between forgotten things. When morning comes, you rise before the sun. No bell calls you, no obligation pulls you forward. Just the gentle rhythm of discipline that still lives in your bones. You wash your face with cold water, dry it with a cloth worn thin by time, and step out into the dawn. The village is still. Not silent, but not yet awake. You like this hour, when everything is waiting to begin again. The Stoics would say that every morning is a rehearsal for death and rebirth. You close your eyes and imagine yourself born anew, stripped of habit, identity, history. Just awareness with breath. You walk toward the edge of town, toward the cemetery. It's not grief that leads you there, not exactly. Just a sense that this part of the path cannot be skipped. The gates are open, slightly rusted. The grass is overgrown in places, the stones leaning at odd angles like tired elders dozing in the sun. You walk slowly, respectfully. You don't know what you're looking for, maybe you're not looking at all. And then you find him, your father. His name carved simply into the stone. No title, no flourish, just dates. A beginning and an end. You sit. You weren't here when he passed. You were cloistered away, still thinking solitude could save you. The news reached you late, too late. There's no guilt in you now, just an ache that pulses like a quiet drum. Not sharp, but steady. You think of his hands, how they worked wood into beauty, how they trembled near the end though he tried to hide it, how he taught you silence not with lectures but by listening. He wasn't a philosopher, but he practiced something like wisdom. He knew when to speak and when to leave space. He knew how to love without asking for praise. You place your hand on the earth near the stone. I used to think letting go was a betrayal, you whisper. But now I see clinging is the real betrayal. It strangles the living and chokes the dead. The Stoics taught us to reflect on death daily, not to be morbid, but to be awake. To remember that everything is borrowed. Your body, your breath, your parents, your time, memento mori. Remember you must die, but more than that, remember to live in a way that dying won't feel like failure. You sit for a long while, not praying, not thinking, just being. Birdsong begins somewhere to your left. The sky softens to a faint pink. A breeze stirs the grass near your knee and it feels like a hand brushing your leg. And then you speak, not to the grave, but to yourself. Letting go isn't forgetting. It's remembering without pain. That, you think, is a strange gift of grief. You don't lose what mattered. You just stop demanding that it return. As you rise, you feel taller somehow, not prouder, just more vertical, more rooted in the earth and more open to the sky. You walk back into town and everything looks slightly different. Not changed, but seen differently, like wiping mist from glass. You notice a man sweeping his doorstep with care, as if he's preparing for someone who may never arrive. You smile. That is devotion. You pass a woman tending to a plant that refuses to bloom. Still she waters it. That is hope. You see a young boy feeding crumbs to birds, watching them scatter with wide eyes. That is trust. These are all forms of prayer, you think. Stoic prayers. Not to gods, but to life itself, to the moments we choose to engage, even knowing they'll pass. You stop at the well and draw water, not because you're thirsty, but because it's a ritual. The coolness of the handle, the creak of the pulley, the sound of water rising from the dark, it anchors you in the now. Someone nearby asks, "Why are you up so early?" You smile. Because this hour belongs to no one, and in it I can belong to myself. They chuckle, "You monks sure talk fancy." You laugh with them, "Maybe." Or maybe we just learn to listen before we speak. As they walk away, you realize something quietly beautiful. You're no longer seeking silence to escape the world. You're using silence to hold it more gently. This is freedom. Not detachment, not apathy, but the ability to witness everything and still return to peace. Another paradox unfolding at your feet. The more you remember death, the more tenderly you hold life. And today you are holding it with both hands. The afternoon sun lays heavy on the rooftops, painting every wall and window with a golden hush. You walk the narrow lane slowly, not because you're tired, but because there's no need to rush anymore. You've noticed it more lately, how much of life is spent in pursuit, hurrying, chasing, grasping, as if time were prey and we were starving. But you are not starving, and so you walk. At the edge of the square, a crowd gathers. Not loud, not frantic, just collected, curious, drawn towards something. You make your way closer and soon see why. A traveling performer has arrived, his wagon parked like a small stage. He balances objects on his head, juggles fire, tells stories with gestures so large they threaten the sky. The children cheer. The adults laugh. Even the older ones, the quiet ones, can't help but smile. And then he asks for a volunteer. His eyes land on you. You hesitate, then step forward. The crowd murmurs, some recognizing you. The monk, the quiet one, the man who returned. He hands you a wooden cup and a stone. "Hide the stone under one of the cups," he says, "and don't let me guess where it is." You do as told. He closes his eyes dramatically, waves his hand, then points at the wrong cup. The crowd laughs, again and again. Each time he's wrong, until finally he grins and says, "But what if the trick is not in finding the stone, but in letting go of needing to know?" He lifts all three cups at once. The stone is gone, the crowd gasps, you blink amused. Somehow he slipped it away. You don't know how, and you don't care, because it doesn't matter. There's a lesson here floating just beneath the laughter. We spend so much of our lives trying to find the stone, the answer, the certainty. We think if we just lift the right cup, we'll finally feel safe. But the Stoics taught something different. They said, "Seek not to know all things, but to be at peace even when you don't." You smile at the performer and bow slightly. He bows back, his eyes sparkling with mischief and insight. As the crowd disperses, you sit by the fountain and think. You remember a story told in the monastery, a parable of the man who climbed a mountain to find the truth, only to discover that the truth was the climb itself. That there is no finish line, only awareness. Only now that used to frustrate you. You wanted clarity, resolution, something to write down and hold. But now you find comfort in the uncertainty. You watch as a boy asks his mother where the stone went. She shrugs. "It's magic," she says, and he accepts that. Maybe wisdom isn't having all the answers. Maybe it's learning to rest comfortably inside the question. You lean back, eyes on the clouds drifting overhead. They do not hurry. They do not ask where they're going. They simply move. And yet they shape the light, cast shadows, bring rain. You wonder how many times you tried to control the uncontrollable. How many days were spent trying to manage what was never yours to hold, others' opinions, the weather, your own future. Control, the Stoics say, is narrow. You possess only your actions, your reactions, your attitude, and everything else. It moves like clouds. You rise again, walking through the quiet afternoon. An older man sweeping dust from his steps looks up and says, "You have the look of someone who knows where they're going." You smile. "Not always, but I know how to walk." He chuckles, "Good enough." You keep moving. There's a paradox here. The less you chase certainty, the more you find ease. And the more you relax into not knowing, the more space life gives you to grow. You turn onto a path you've never taken before, not to find something, but to be somewhere unfamiliar. To be present in surprise. A cat watches you from a windowsill, unbothered. A door creaks open somewhere, then shuts. The world continues. And you continue too, not because you must, but because the path itself is the point. That evening the rain comes softly, Not the kind that sends people running, but the kind that hushes everything. A slow, thoughtful drizzle that makes stones shimmer and trees sigh. You step outside with bare feet and feel the earth cool beneath you. The monastery had a word for this kind of rain, metta, though it wasn't the rain they meant. It was the quality of kindness without condition, gentle, unhurried, like the way water touches all things without asking anything in return. You walk under its touch. Your robe gathers the wet slowly, not soaked, just kissed by moisture. You watch drops hang from the edge of rooftops, waiting for gravity to make its final case. Some fall, some cling a little longer. There's no rush. And for a while, neither is there in you. You find your way to the old schoolhouse, the one where you once sat on crooked benches and learned how to spell your name. It's empty now, boards nailed across the windows. But you remember the sound of chalk on slate, the smell of dusty paper, the way your teacher once said, "You're not here to be right. You're here to learn how to ask better questions." Back then you didn't understand the difference. Now you do. A child runs by, barefoot and laughing, arms outstretched to catch the rain. You smile. There's no fear in him, just joy in getting wet. He doesn't ask if the rain has a purpose. He doesn't need the sky to explain itself. You think of all the times you demanded reasons, from the weather, from people, from life, as if understanding would protect you from feeling, as if meaning was owed to you. But the Stoics never promised reasons. They promised responsibility. Epictetus once said, "Don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." That used to feel like surrender, like giving up. Now it feels like alignment. You step into the shelter of an archway. An old man huddles there already, warming his hands over a small lantern. He looks up. "Evening, monk." "Evening." He gestures to the flame. Not much, but it helps. You sit beside him without speaking. The rain whispers on the roof above. After a moment he says, "I used to hate the rain, made my joints ache, made my boots heavy, made me feel slow." He pauses. "But now I think maybe it was never the rain that bothered me, just the part of me that didn't want to slow down." You glance over at him. His face is creased with time, but his eyes are clear. "That's wisdom," you say. He grins. "Nah, that's arthritis." You both chuckle quietly. There's comfort in these small exchanges. No performance, no debate, just two people sharing space. Eventually, the rain lightens, becomes mist. He stands slowly and stretches his back. "Well," he says, "the rain gave me an excuse to sit still. That's something." You nod. "Everything is something, if we let it be." He walks off into the fading drizzle, and you stay a little longer, watching the steam rise off stone like breath. You think of the people who ask, "How do I stay calm when everything goes wrong?" And you want to say, nothing has gone wrong. It has only gone differently. The Stoics taught that there is no bad weather, only unprepared minds. No cruel fate, only expectations unmet. Even now, as the wet air curls around you, you know, the storm is never the enemy. Resistance is. You walk back through the square, slower now, as if not to disturb the delicate hush left by the rain. Each puddle holds a reflection, not just of buildings and clouds, but of you walking alone and yet not lonely. You used to want answers, now you want presence. And tonight you have it. The next day brings no grand revelation, no turning point, just the quiet unfolding of another morning, the kind that the old you might have overlooked in search of something louder. But now, you rise and notice the way the sun threads its way through the slats of the shutters. You listen to the kettle begin to hum long before it whistles. You breathe in the stillness and let it bloom inside your chest. You don't need more. That in itself feels like a kind of miracle. You head toward the workshop district. You used to avoid this part of town, too loud, too full of hammer strikes and shouting men and the smell of hot iron. But today you walk slowly among the shops. You watch a young apprentice drop a chisel and wince as his master scolds him. You see a potter shaping a bowl with steady hands and softer eyes. You stop near the window of a weaver's shop and trace the air with your fingers, remembering the rhythm of your own hands years ago when you still mended robes yourself. A woman steps out from the tannery nearby. She sees you, hesitates, then approaches. She's cautious but not fearful. "You're the monk who left," she says. You nod. "And now you're the monk who came back." Another nod. She tilts her head. "Did you find what you were looking for?" A question asked by many. You look at her and answer plainly. "I found out that I was the one being looked for." She blinks. "What does that mean?" "It means I was always searching for something to give me peace, but I never stopped to ask why I thought peace had to be given at all." She stares at you, then smiles. "You talk like a puzzle." You smile too. "That's because the answer changes depending on how you ask." She shrugs and walks away, but not unkindly. You can tell she's thinking. Maybe she'll come back, maybe not, but the seed is there. And that's enough. You continue walking until you reach the edge of the workshops, where the noise begins to thin out and the smell of smoke fades into lavender and dry wheat. You sit on a low wall and watch a man struggling to lift a heavy sack onto his cart. Another man nearby watches him too, but doesn't move. You watch silently, and then you see it. The struggle is his to learn from, not to be rescued from. It's something the Stoics understood deeply. Compassion is not always intervention. Sometimes compassion is letting someone build their own strength. And yet, if the sack were to fall and crush him, you'd step in. There is a balance here, one that modern minds struggle with. Help when it matters, step back when it doesn't. Know the difference not from fear but from clarity. The man succeeds. He wipes his brow and looks around, sheepishly proud. You offer a small nod. He returns it, almost surprised. You've learned something else in your time away. Not every kindness needs to be seen. Not every effort needs a witness. Freedom, the Stoics said, is not needing approval for what is right. You walk back toward the center of town. On the way, a child runs past and bumps your leg. He stumbles, afraid of your reaction, but you only kneel and steady him. "No harm," you whisper. His eyes are wide, but they soften. He nods and runs again, this time more carefully. A small moment, but you feel it settle in your chest like a pebble dropped into a still pool, ripples moving outward. At the fountain you stop and close your eyes. The world is still happening. People still rush, still argue, still hunger for things they can't name. But in you something has quieted, not gone, just softened. You remember something your teacher once said, back when you were young and full of burning questions. If you keep sharpening the blade, it will become useless. At some point, the work is in the restraint. You didn't understand that then. Now you carry it with you like a second heartbeat. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. Not to the town, not to your past, not even to yourself. What once felt like retreat now feels like return. And the most surprising part, no one asked for this transformation. They didn't need your wisdom, your stillness, your soft voice wrapped around sharp truths. The world went on without you. It would have continued still. But now you move through it differently. And that is what matters. Evening again. It arrives like it always does, quiet, inevitable, indifferent. The sky dims by degrees, not in haste but in rhythm, as if it were exhaling after a long day. You sit outside the bakery just as you did once long ago, when bread meant comfort and the world still felt like something to conquer. Now, you simply enjoy the smell. People pass by without much notice. A few recognize you. Fewer speak. You're no longer a curiosity, just part of the town again. A quiet man who walks and watches and sometimes smiles for no reason. It's enough. An older woman sits beside you. She doesn't ask if she can. She simply does because age has earned her that quiet entitlement. She holds a small pastry wrapped in cloth, takes a bite, chews slowly. "You're the monk," she says after a long silence. You nod. "I used to think monks were cowards," she says, "running away from the mess, hiding from real life behind silence and incense." You say nothing. She takes another bite. "But now I'm not so sure. I think maybe you just learned how to sit still before the rest of us did." You smile. She offers you half her pastry. You take it, not out of hunger but because refusal would rob her of the gesture. You chew slowly too. It's dry. "Sweet, ordinary," she says. "Do you miss it?" You look at her. "The monastery." She nods. "Sometimes," you say, But not the walls, I miss the rhythm, the intention, the way everything meant something. She hums. And here, you say, everything still means something. It's just harder to notice. That's the truth of it. Silence is easy when nothing interrupts it, but the real work is carrying that stillness into the noise, into the mess, into the market square, the kitchen, the memory of an old wound that still twitches when it rains. The Stoics spoke often of apatheia, not apathy but equanimity, a mind unshaken by fortune or failure, a heart that does not cling. You think of that now as a young man storms past, arguing with a lover, throwing words like knives. You hear the bitterness, the desperation. You've been both of them. Once you would have tried to fix it, to insert wisdom like a salve. Now you let them pass. Sometimes people need the storm. Sometimes they have to feel the weight of their own chaos before they're ready to lay it down. And who are you to interrupt that journey? You turn to the old woman. She's watching them too. Youth burns bright, she says, but sometimes it forgets where it put the matches. You both laugh gently, then she stands. Thank you for the company, she says, and for the pastry. She waves it off. It was getting stale anyway. You sit alone for a while longer, watching the lamplighter begin his slow work around the square. One by one, flames flicker to life, like stars bowing to the horizon. You think again about intention, about how easily it gets lost in the shuffle of daily life, how often we act without asking why, how we spend so much time planning for later while now slips between our fingers. The Stoics knew this. They reminded themselves constantly, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. It's not morbid, it's merciful, because it strips away the illusion of later. And in that stripping you find what actually matters. A breath, a touch, a conversation that doesn't need to go anywhere, a half-stale pastry offered by a stranger. You rise as well, your knees creaking slightly, not in protest, just in reminder. Even the body knows, nothing is forever, and that's okay. You walk the long way home, passing the river. You stop on the small bridge and watch the water move beneath it. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't resist the rocks. It simply moves, shaping the world with soft persistence. You used to try to be like stone, unmovable, steady. But now, you'd rather be the water. You wake before dawn again, though now it feels less like habit and more like greeting. The sky is still dark, but not silent. Roosters crow, wind taps gently at shutters, and somewhere a pot clangs against another in a sleepy kitchen. You sit upright, wrap yourself in the warmth of your robe and breathe. Not deeply, not forcefully, just enough. Outside, the road to the hill calls you, not with urgency, but with that same quiet invitation it's always offered. And today you accept. You walk past the bakery, past the empty chairs in front of the tea shop, past the house where the red lantern sways slightly from last night's breeze. Up the path you know by heart. The stones greet your souls like old friends, some shift, some stay still. You've climbed this hill many times, as a boy in search of answers, as a young man in search of escape, as a monk in search of silence. And now, in search of nothing, just presence. At the top the view is wide. The town lies below like a sleeping animal, all curled roofs and chimney breath. Beyond it the trees stretch endlessly toward the edge of your seeing. And above, the sky has begun to blush, hesitating between night and day. You sit on your usual rock, not a throne, not a sacred seat, just stone shaped by time and weather. You close your eyes and listen. The wind says nothing new, but you're hearing it differently. And then a thought rises, not urgent, not loud, just a soft visitor. What if you never needed to leave in the first place? You breathe. The question doesn't sting, because it's not regret speaking. It's understanding. Sometimes we travel great distances to learn that what we were chasing was never far from us, that the quiet we sought was always here, just beneath the noise of our wanting. You remember the first days in the monastery, how your mind raced even when your body stilled, how the silence terrified you because it reflected everything you didn't want to see. It took years to realize silence was never empty. It was simply honest. And now, as you sit watching the world wake beneath you, you feel that same honesty rising. You left because you needed to see who you were without the roles, the habits, the attachments. And now you return not to reclaim them, but to let them be what they are, no longer what they mean. You hear footsteps behind you, slow, familiar. You don't turn, you already know. He sits beside you, your old mentor. The one who first gave you the broom, the robe, the stern but kind reminders. He looks older, so do you. You say nothing for a while, neither does he. Then he speaks. I wondered when you'd climb this hill again. I've climbed it many times. He nods. But this is the first time you've arrived. You both smile. Did I disappoint you? You ask. He laughs quietly. Only when I expected you to become someone other than yourself. You let that settle. I thought I was supposed to transcend, you say. No, he says. You were supposed to return. That's what transcendence really is. A coming home, not a flying away. You think of all the books you read, the scrolls, the teachings, the debates. So many words used to point at something beyond words. And here it is, two men sitting quietly, watching the sky turn from blue-black to gold. What now? You ask. He shrugs. You live. You tend to what's in front of you. You stop asking for clarity where compassion will do. Another paradox, another thread in the Stoic cloth. He rises slowly. I'll leave you with the sun. You nod. He walks back down the path, his robe catching the light like memory. You don't watch him go. Instead, you stay. You stay until the sky opens completely, until the first bird dares to sing, until your breath and the breeze find the same rhythm. You stay, not to escape, not to understand, but to witness. Because that's all life has ever asked of you, to be present, to be willing, to be. That afternoon, you return to a task you had long forgotten, mending the old bench outside your father's home. The wood is cracked from years of sun and rain. One leg leans inward like it's tired of standing. The whole thing groans if you so much as press a hand to it. You fetch tools from the shed. Some are rusted, some still sharp. Each one fits your grip like a memory you never quite let go. You begin sanding first, then bracing. It's quiet work, honest work. The kind of work the Stoics would have approved of, not because it is grand, but because it requires patience, attention, and humility. As you work, children pass by. Some pause to watch. One asks what you're doing. You look up. I'm not fixing it, you say. I'm learning how it wants to stand again. The boy frowns, not understanding. That's how things are, you add. Sometimes they don't break. They just lean in the wrong direction for too long. He nods slowly, then runs off, kicking dust as he goes. You smile. It's strange how simple acts carry the deepest lessons. This bench, like you, is not starting over. It is continuing, with scars, with softness, with a slower rhythm. And yet it still serves, still holds, still welcomes. You hammer a nail gently into place and think of how many times you tried to hammer your own thoughts into shape, only to find that force rarely creates peace. The Stoics often spoke of living according to nature. That phrase confused you once. Did it mean living among trees, rejecting towns, denying emotion? Now, as you work in the golden quiet, you think it means something else. To live according to nature is to accept the impermanence of all things, and yet still offer your full self to them. To love knowing loss will follow. To build knowing decay is inevitable. To hold knowing release is coming. You step back. The bench no longer leans. It isn't perfect, but it stands. You sit on it carefully, testing the wood. It holds. You feel the weight of your own body, not burdensome, just real, just here. A woman walks by carrying vegetables. She nods at you. Nice work. You nod back. It's old wood. She shrugs. Aren't we all? You both laugh. The sun dips lower. You stay on the bench and let the day stretch around you. There is something deeply healing about finishing a task you weren't asked to do, about offering care where no one demanded it, about aligning your small acts with the deeper currents of life. You think of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius writing his meditations alone at night, not for publication, not for praise, just to remind himself how to live. You wonder what bench he was mending in his own way. You close your eyes and lean back. This return to the village has not been triumphant. You came back with no fanfare, no applause, no revelations. And yet you have found something you never expected: rhythm. Not the kind forced by bells or ritual, but the kind born from presence. You rise when you rise. You speak when words are needed. You listen more than you respond. You're no longer a monk in title. And yet you've never been closer to the essence of what you hope to be. A man at peace in the world, not above it. You open your eyes. The sky is blushing again. Evening always returns. So do you. Tonight, you return to the same room where you first slept upon coming back. The walls haven't changed. Neither has the old shelf with its 3 chipped bowls and the candle stub resting in its wax cradle. And yet everything feels different, because now you are different. You close the door gently behind you and sit near the open window. The breeze brushes your face like a familiar hand. Outside, the village is quiet. A single dog barks once, then stops. Somewhere someone is laughing faintly, soft, contented laughter that fades into stillness. You place your hands on your knees and breathe, not to calm yourself, but to notice yourself. There is no need to chase peace tonight. It's already here, wearing the silence like a robe. You reflect, not in a grand way, not in summary, but in sensation. You feel the small weight of your choices, the soft gravity of the life you've returned to. This isn't closure. It's continuation. You've let go of more than anyone can see. And perhaps that is the most sacred kind of release, the kind that doesn't need ceremony, only presence. You think of your past self, the younger version, eyes wide and restless, heart tangled in the illusion that meaning was somewhere else, always just beyond reach. He would not recognize you now, but he would envy your calm. You walk to the desk and pick up the small notebook you've been writing in these past weeks. No one will read it. It's not for them. It's for you, and for the space inside you that still needs to be heard. You write, "I no longer seek escape, only alignment. I no longer seek answers, only intimacy with the question. I no longer run from the world. I sit with it quietly until it no longer frightens me." You put the pen down and close the book. Enough for today. You lie down on the narrow bed, the one with the uneven frame and the squeaky board near the foot. You smile as it creaks under your weight. The familiar discomfort has become comforting. And as your body begins to settle into sleep, your mind slows like a tide pulling gently back from the shore. The Stoics never promised bliss. They promised resilience. They promised clarity. They promised that peace isn't something to find, but something to remember. And tonight, you remember it well. This life, with all its imperfections and noise, is not a test to pass. It's a field to walk through, a cup to hold gently, a stone to place mindfully where it belongs. You let the stillness expand. A wind down begins to whisper in your chest, not in words but in sensation. A soft loosening of the muscles behind your eyes, a gentle lengthening of breath, a lightness around the ribs. You are not racing towards sleep. You are simply falling into it like a leaf accepting the river. Let your thoughts drift. Let the story unravel gently like the last notes of a lullaby. There is nothing more to be done tonight. No problem to solve, no image to fix, no meaning to wrestle from the dark, only rest, only peace. Only this quiet reminder you have returned, not to the past, not to the person you once were, but to this moment, to presence, to yourself.